What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I'm going to be talking about quite the hot topic in the knife community right now, and that's Rockwell hardness and why it matters. There's a very large controversy going on. A lot of people are upset about their knives underperforming due to low hardness. Essentially, the controversy is I'm not going to be calling out any makers, any manufacturers, anybody on YouTube, any Instagram accounts, anything like that. Not interested in drama. This is basically just my thoughts on the controversy after watching the chaos for the last 2 months. But essentially, the controversy is there were some knives using steels like M390, 20CV, and 204P, which is all the same composition. Very, very premium steel that's supposed to have amazing edge retentive qualities that were underperforming in cut tests. And then they were sent to get HRC testing, and they came back with subpar hardness. So there was a direct correlation between underperforming in cut tests and low hardness. So we as consumers, we're spending hundreds of dollars on these really premium knives and expecting a certain level of performance. And when they're underperforming, to us, it looks like maybe some makers are, and there are anomalies. There are, there's always going to be a certain percentage of lemons and variances in the heat treat process. But when we start seeing that type of consistency over and over and over and over again, it makes us think, are some of these makers cutting corners in order to save costs? And that can sting because, a lot of, like me, for example, I have a regular 8 to 5 job. So if I pay $400 on a knife, and I carry it with me at my job, I'm only cutting open letters. I'm cutting, little simple things. I wouldn't know the difference between M390 and a gas station knife for the most part. Maybe it would come out more on the weekends when I use my knives for outdoor tasks. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of people in the knife community who are just collectors or mild users, and they, in some situations it might make us feel like, hey, I paid all this money and I'm finding out the steel might not be what I expected. I don't really like that. So it's important that we talk about this, but it's also important to talk about it because there are always newcomers in this world. And when they're getting on YouTube and they're watching some of these response videos and they're getting on Instagram and hearing us joke about it, it can be confusing. This chaos can be very misleading. And what has happened, I think, is some people are given the impression that high hardness equals good and low hardness equals bad without any real explanation of exactly what hardness is and how it can affect blade performance. Before I get too far here, I owe it to my current viewers and my future viewers to know who you're getting this information from. Basically, my qualifications for talking about this. Basically nothing. I am not a professional metallurgist. I have no experience there. I have never heat treated a blade. I don't know how to. I have minimal experience sharpening knives, even less experience sharpening super steels. And like I said, my use experience is very, very limited. The most complicated things that I do are basically during, cut tests during home projects or when we add on to our house, things like that. So just wanted to know kind of where we're at. It's very important to me that you guys get quality information on this channel, but I'm going to stick to this stuff that I know that I can explain. So for people who, and most of you guys watching my channel you guys are all intelligent people, so if you are, an experienced person in this knife world, you probably aren't going to get much information from this video. This is mainly directed at new people who might be confused about this controversy. Before we get too far here, just wanted to remind everybody that I am currently at 31 patrons. My goal is 40 to open up a giveaway for this beautiful Slim Midi Medford Marauder. Very beautiful knife, very expensive knife. So once I hit 40, I will be giving this away to one lucky winner. Not just a patron, not just a subscriber. Literally anybody can enter this. I just need to hit 40 patrons first. So if you're interested in helping me reach my goal, you can follow the link in the description to my Patreon, read the bold text for some additional details on this giveaway. And then if you decide you want to help out, you can join any tier, even the $1 tier. It counts. I would very much appreciate it. That money all goes right back into the channel, helps me pay for things like shipping and insurance, shipping back to the generous viewers who have offered up their knives for review so that I can bring you guys this content. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started here. I have things laid out in a way that's going to help me kind of make a simple point. There are many attributes to a knife. When you are choosing a knife, there are a few things to consider. There's corrosion resistance, which is basically the knife's ability to resist corrosion. Then there's going to be wear resistance, which is basically the steel's ability to maintain its edge. I have just so you guys know, so I actually had to talk with Super Steel Steve to make sure that I understood all of this first. So the reason I'm kind of like kind of stuttering around this is I have my iPad off camera and I have notes that he's given me, like, make sure you explain it in this way because people mix this stuff up. So you have, like I said, edge stability. I'm sorry, wear resistance, which is the steel's ability to maintain its edge. You have edge stability, and edge stability is the steel's ability to resist chipping or rolling. There's toughness, which is the steel's ability to resist plastic deformation, like chipping and cracking, but when you're applying lateral force, like prying. And then you have hardness, which is how hard the steel is. Hardness will directly affect edge retention or wear resistance, edge stability, and toughness. It will affect all of those things. There's a lot that goes into this, a lot that's way over my head, but essentially as you increase toughness, as you increase hardness, you will increase the steel's ability to maintain its edge. But also, as you increase hardness, the steel gets more brittle. Now, that's for each individual composition. Every knife on the table has a different, well, there's a lot of 20 CV and M390 on the table, but each different steel that you're seeing on the table, for those of you who know what steels these knives come in, each has a different composition. So as you increase hardness for each individual composition, those attributes change for better or for worse. So I've got a few examples here in the middle of steels that, act differently or react differently to increasing or decreasing hardness. The first one on the table is 1095. The second one is S35VN. The third one is M390. And the fourth one is ZDP 189. A lot of you are probably, know exactly where I'm going with this, but 1095 is not a steel that is notorious for being overly premium. It's also not a steel that's notorious for having amazing edge retention versus what else is out there right now. It's not a stainless steel, hence the coating on the blade. What it is known for is having really good toughness and edge stability. Now, its optimal range of Rockwell hardness is lower than everything else that you see on the table. And that's the main point that I want to emphasize. It's not so much hard or soft. It's an optimal range. So essentially the qualities of the steel, or the makeup, the composition, the idea of what that steel is supposed to be, is brought out by hitting an optimal Rockwell range. Typically, what you'll see 1095 in to make those qualities shine, which is really good edge stability and ease of sharpening, is going to be around 57, 58, something like that. Now, there definitely are makers out there who harden it higher, but as you increase hardness, it increases, the brittleness or the likeliness of the steel to chip. It changes the toughness and the edge stability. Now, in some cases, depending on the composition, lowering the hardness can change toughness for the better. But again, that's an area where I can't really speak on because I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But if you were out, let's say you're going to go camping for a week, right? And you can choose between, let's pretend we have S110V on the table. Let's pretend this Manix 2 is an S110V Manix 2. S110V is very, very hard and incredible at edge retention, but it's not known for being super duper tough. And it can be a little bit chippy, right? It's also super hard to sharpen. Now, if you're camping for a week and you're going to use your knife for everything, you're going to be building your shelter with it, you're going to be batoning wood, maybe not with the Azula, but a 1095 blade. You're going to be maybe doing some digging, some chopping. Pretty much any knife is going to go dull in that 1 week, well before the 1 week is over. So you're going to have to resharpen it. The first thing you're going to be happy about is that your 1095 blade will not have chipped nearly as much as your S110V blade because it's got better edge stability. It's also going to be substantially easier to sharpen because of its composition and because of its hardness. So that whetstone you brought with you because you didn't want to drag your entire sharp maker with you on your camping trip, it's going to be a lot easier to just use that whetstone to bring your 1095 blade back to a working edge that can function than it would be to try and do the same thing on your S110V blade. So that's an optimal hardness range. Is it softer than the optimal range of M390 or S110V or a steel like that, M4? Yeah, absolutely. Does it make it worse? 1095 is less premium, but as long as it's in its optimal range, the steel is performing as intended. And if you get your 1085 blade and its hardness tested at 58, then I would say it's in its optimal range and it's going to perform as it should. Moving on to steels like S35VN. S35VN is meant as a direct evolution of S30V. To this day, it's still one of the only steels that was created specifically for a folding knife. Most of these steels have different applications first and are folding knife steels second. S35VN was designed, it was supposed to have the same or better edge retention than S30V. It was supposed to be a little bit tougher. It was supposed to be roughly as stainless, a little bit less stainless, but mainly easier to machine. And they achieved most of that. I think recent testing of S35VN at the exact same hardness levels of S30V have found that S35VN is slightly less edge retentive than S30V. But it definitely is tougher and it definitely is easy to machine. And for that reason, it's also easier to sharpen. For that reason, S35VN remains a very good choice for high-end knives because it's very well-rounded. It's kind to newcomers and veterans alike. The typical range that you see S35VN in is about 59 to 61. It's if increasing it, on the 60. Let's say you have S35VN on the 61 end of that average scale. That's going to be a little more edge retentive and a little more prone to chipping than one that's on the 59 end of the scale. Does that mean the 61's better than the 59? For some people, yes. For other people, maybe not. I think for the vast majority of people, the differences are going to be so marginal that they're not going to notice it. For somebody that's out using their knife really hard every day and resharpening it every day, yeah, they're going to notice that difference. And they may weigh in one favor or the other. What's not appropriate is when you have S35VN showing up in the mid-50s. You definitely don't want that. M390 is supposed to be a little bit harder. You generally see M390 between 60 and 62. M390 is notorious for having exceptional wear resistance and exceptional corrosion resistance versus other super steels on the market. Now, in order for that to come out, again, it needs to meet its optimal range, which is, like I said, 60 to 62. This is the steel that was in question on some knives, not the Ritter Hogue, but some makers and some of their models. It was coming back soft in the mid-50s. Now, M390, once you reduce it and you make it that soft, you lose so much of the edge retentive qualities that you basically you've got a chunk of steel that's very stainless and is performing, very similar to a lot of common stuff out there. So given that M390 blades are generally amongst the more expensive in the premium knife world, I mean, the least expensive 20CV blade I have ever seen was that DLT Trading exclusive Manix 2 that was like $130. I think on average, M390 blades are like, that Hogue Ritter's $150, $155, but I see it's pretty common to see a $200 price tag on an M390 blade. So people who are paying at least or right around $200 for their blade, and then they find out, it doesn't matter if it's in their display case or if they're actually using it, but they find out that it's soft and it's underperforming versus what other M390 blades are performing at. That's a sting. That really hurts, and that's not something that any of us want to see. Now, there are some cases of manufacturers hardening M390 to 59, and I want to stress this because I think this is newcomers see, hard is good, soft is bad, and we see so many steels right around that 59 to 60 mark that I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are getting the impression that anything at 60 or up is good, and anything at 59 or back is not good. It's not the case. It's different for every single steel. In some situations, you will see manufacturers hardening M390 to 59. In fact, I think Rick Hinderer actually uses a Peters heat treat, and they harden it to 59. Because, and the way I understand it is the way that Rick sees his his consumer base, how they use their knives. He's the way he looks at it is they're still getting the benefit, these features of M390 that are really good, but he's making it just a little bit easier to sharpen for people who might be using their blades. You're still getting exceptional edge retention in M390 versus a lot of other stuff that's out there, but does the edge retention of M390 really shine at like 61 or 62? I think so. I think the edge retention is really what people want in M390. And so people want to see it more at that level, but this is a range and it's a very foggy area. And I think a lot of it's the extreme ends of this that caused the controversy. It's incredibly soft M390 that caused the controversy. And remember, I didn't say this, but each level of Rockwell as you go up is exponentially harder than the previous level. So these knives that we're testing in the mid-range of 50, these M390 blades, those were definitely too soft to emphasize those attributes. But around that 60 mark, we're really close, 59, 60, 61, 62. Generally speaking, you're good in that area. But people want to see 61-ish in M390. Now, and to throw in another thing that can be confusing, we've got steels like ZDP 189 on this special version of the Delica. ZDP 189 is more of an obscure steel than M390, but it's one that a lot of knife enthusiasts are still familiar with. ZDP 189 has pretty good edge retention, better than S35VN or CTS XHP, not quite as good as M390 or M4. It is not a stainless steel, but it's more stainless than M4. Definitely not as stainless as M390. It's also fairly tough. It's tougher than M390, but it's not quite as tough as M4. So it's got an interesting combination of attributes there. But to make those attributes shine, ZDP 189 is actually hardened above everything else that I've got on my table. It's like 64, 65. So that's really hard, but that's where that steel's composition needs to be hardened to make those attributes shine. Does that make ZDP 189 better because it has higher hardness to achieve all of those attributes and be stable? No, it just means that that's where that steel needs to be hardened. Most of these steels that we see are going to be right there between what I see. It's like 58 to 62 amongst every common super steel that you see. There are weird ones like ZDP 189. Then there's, like S125V, which you never see anymore, or like Rex 121, which can achieve Rockwell hardness of 70 or higher. Rex 121 has the highest potential edge retention of any steel that exists, but it's incredibly difficult to machine and it's incredibly chippy, making it basically just a frustration to the average person. From what I've heard, even a professional knife sharpener, most guys won't touch Rex 121 because of that. So hardness is not, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing, but the main thing here is that we need to be making sure that these steels are hitting the optimal Rockwell hardness range to make their attributes shine. I know how much you guys love hearing my car analogies, but the best analogy that I can give to this is if I were the type of person who could afford a $500,000 Lamborghini, I probably would also be the type of person who would just let that car sit in my garage and I might enjoy it. Maybe just take it out for a cruise every now and then, but I would baby it. I wouldn't push it, right? So if that car was advertised for 800 or 900 horsepower, for the most part, I wouldn't know, but I would assume and trust the maker of that car to make sure that it was tuned properly regardless. And then I would have an everyday driver that I might, use a little bit harder or not care as much about because I didn't pay as much money for it. The same is true with pocket knives. Now, still though, that's not saying the everyday driver doesn't need to be tuned correctly, but in this example, I would say my everyday driver would be my Manix 2. And then the knife that I park in my garage might be something like let's say the Hinderer XM18 might be more of a knife that I would park in my garage. Now, if I were to one day decide, you know what, I'm going to take that Lamborghini out, I'm going to drive it, I'm going to get on it, let's see what it's got, and it started performing in a way that was similar to a car that had only half the horsepower, maybe 400 horsepower, understandably, I'm going to be pretty upset. Take it in, they say, oh, it's our fault. Let's get you, let's switch your Lamborghini out for another Lamborghini. Probably not, but I would be really upset if I found out that there was just slouch in the engine tuning process or corners cut in it, and they just didn't care because they didn't think that anybody would notice. Then I'm left with a car that's severely overpriced and severely underpowered. Exact same thing with these premium knives. So if we're paying the money for them, they should perform the way that the best should be brought out in the steel by proper heat treatment, regardless of whether the person buying the knife is a collector or somebody who's actually going to use it. We should get what we are, what we're paying for. Now, the arguments are going to continue. There will be infinite arguments and if you look on blade forums, Rockwell hardness has been argued about forever. There are going to be some people who say, I want my M390 at 62 and I don't want it any softer than that. And there's going to be people who say 60 Rockwell is just fine for M390. It brings out this attribute a little bit better and blah, blah, blah. It's the reason that there are going to be infinite arguments about the exactly the right optimal range is because every individual person has a different idea of what is optimal performance for their knife. And they also have different ranges of experience and use habits. So like me, for example, I have almost nothing compared to somebody who uses a knife every single day. So, without there being these guys testing hardness and doing these cut tests, I wouldn't know the difference between my M390 blades and some of the gas station knives that I keep around on the channel to use as examples. I'm really happy that there are people out there testing this. Now, as with all things, there are people who are doing it correctly and incorrectly. All I can do is advise you guys, get as much information as you possibly can from as many different trusted sources, and then use the accumulation of that information to form your own opinion. That's all you can do. When you're done watching this video, definitely go check out another channel where you can get useful information. I trust what Super Steel Steve says, and there are a lot of other channels that are like his that are giving me the same information. There's a consistency there, which is why I tend to lean on that. That's really all you can do. I hope that this offered some clarification for people. I hope that I gave information that was useful. As usual, like I said, I definitely don't know everything. So if I need to be corrected, share that correction in the comments section for everybody. And that way going forward, I'll try and have corrected myself and not give bad information. But I hope this was at least mildly entertaining for those of you who were aware of the controversy and were already aware of how Rockwell hardness affects things and why it's important. Definitely something that's important. We need to be talking about these things. There needs to be people pointing out these flaws, so that we have consistent quality control, so that we can keep so that we're in line, and so that the manufacturers we're buying these knives from are in line, and everybody's getting what they pay for. But arguments they'll continue forever. We'll never get it exactly. Everybody will, there's never going to be a point where everybody's just totally happy and totally in agreement on things. But definitely the Rockwell hardness issue, I think, needs to be addressed and fixed, and there needs to be some accountability. Absolutely. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.